Hey, now, what's going on? We're coming to you absolutely excited for this episode of the Art and Science of Complex Sales. I am here with Nick Massaro and Zack Bauer, who are both laughing at me 100% directly, which they should. It's highly easy to laugh at. But I've been waiting a long time for this episode, guys. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. We're laughing with you, Paul, not at you.
Yes.
No, it could be at. It could be at. It's all right.
Laughing with you. No, we're excited to be here. This should be fun.
All right, so let's get to start. I give a couple reasons why we're doing this. Zach and Nick and I get to have fun together on a daily basis, work together, and they're two of the best sales executives, account executives, prospectors, all around amazing salespeople that I've met and had the chance to work with. So we are going to dive into that. We're going to dive into what sales is to them and cover really the differences in what makes a top performing sales professional a top performing sales professional. So with that in mind, Zach, I'm going to hand it off to you first. And this is a question that I ask every first time member of the show. And you've already been on the show a couple of times, but you are getting asked this question. What does sales mean to you?
That's such a big question. I think like a lot of folks, I stumbled into sales kind of by accident, right? Like I never sat out on a course where I was like, hey, like I want to be a salesperson when I grow up. So as those things change, I don't think of sales so much as a thing as I do like just a series of advancing to a decision, right? So if I can help people along that journey, that's my ultimate goal. It's really just the process of being authentic and helping people in the best way possible, right? And if I were to narrow it down, that's what it is. Be authentic, be helpful, consult. Don't aim to close everything. You're not closing people as much as you are opening the door for a conversation and figuring out how to help them and find that alignment. So that's sales to me.
That's awesome. Nick, you have to, so we're competing here, obviously, Nick, so you have to one up that. No.
There's a leaderboard somewhere.
Yes. Number of likes on that part of the episode.
Yes. So I listened to your show, Paul, and I think the answer that Zach gave comes up quite frequently. I know I've heard that from other sales consultants and practitioners that you've interviewed where they talk about helping people. And I always get a little grin on my face when they start down that path, because I agree. I like helping people too. But the reason I smile is because I think, am I just an a-hole? Am I the one salesperson that's not considering my life's work to be helping people? I do enjoy that, and I think having that in your core somewhere is important, but maybe I just think of the answer a bit differently, where I think, what do I love about sales? It's not so much closing the deal or even seeing how great the product worked for a client. Like that's great, but for me, maybe it's where I kind of started my career, but I love opening deals. I love finding new opportunities and connecting with people that I haven't spoken with before and being different enough that they don't shut down the conversation immediately, right? Because people are getting calls all the time, and it's even worse now on your cell phone with all these robo calls and political calls and everything else. So it's kind of making it easier to differentiate yourself over the phone. But for me, that's what I love about sales is the ability to go out, meet people that you haven't spoken with before, strike up a conversation, strike up a relationship. And then, if that turns into you being able to help them with your offering, service, or product, that's tremendous. And that's a good part of it. And one thing that has transformed is, over my career with Membrain, I have learned to enjoy kind of the middle part of sales way more, navigating a complex sales cycle. Once you have determined that there's enough fit and enough urgency to consider that an active sales engagement, in the past for me, that part's been kind of boring. It's in the pipeline, you're talking about it every week, When are they going to close? What can I do to help? These type of things from your manager. But it wasn't really structured in a way. It wasn't really gamified in a way. I think we knew it loosely. Anyway, I'll kind of get to the point. That middle part of really being a consultative sales person where you can be really helpful, that has become more fun and more fulfilling to me. But, early in my career, it was definitely like new relationships, cracking those doors open, and building. I'm kind of a nerd too about the sales infrastructure. So I love tinkering with the process, seeing how much more effective I can be if I do this or I say it this way, and getting real-time results and being in control of my own destiny to a certain degree. That's something that I really like about sales. So that's why I always grin when people are like, oh, it's about helping people. Maybe it is. For me, that's like a nice added perk. But it's not the reason that I enjoy the art of sales.
Well, it's interesting. Both your definitions, it's about figuring out how to move forward on a path.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the time I'm knocking on the door or picking up a phone, or it's how do I move forward on a path that we can actually get something done. And the other thing that I notice about how you both sell is you are not afraid if there is not something to get done, or we're not the right person to get it done. You're both willing to raise your hand and say, yeah, a meeting doesn't make sense, or yeah, we shouldn't start walking down this journey together, or because you're always thinking about, and in both your definitions, this is really apparent. How do we move things forward, whether that's for the good or for the helping or just for the joy of figuring out how to walk that path? That commitment is really, really pretty incredible and differentiated. So when you're diving in and you're using, Nick, you love to use systems to do this and kind of figure that out. What does that system actually help you do? What are the types of systems that you're looking for that help you execute people? No, you're not putting bam, bam. Execute on that plan with somebody and get stuff done.
Yeah, I'm going to just kind of tie something back that you said. The people I love helping is the business that I work for, right? Like that resonates more with me as a benefit of sales versus the end customer. And again, I love when they take advantage of the product or service or tool and make it theirs and go have a really successful implementation and go crush their goals, specifically with Membrain. That is rewarding, but me personally, I've never been that close with that side of things as I have been with how is sales impacting positively the organization that I work for, right? Like I've loved bringing on customers that totally transformed the organization, right? Mm-hmm. Customers that came in and were big enough with different enough needs that we had to pivot what we did with the product, or we had to hire more people and create more jobs in the community. Like that part of it is really fulfilling to me, building an organization. And I think sales is one of the most important parts of any business, right? Mm-hmm. Like nothing happens until something is sold. For me, that's what I love about sales is you can see, oh man, I found this customer. No one had ever talked to him before. It took me a year, but that has now become our biggest, best customer, and that's opening our door to 5 new markets that we didn't know about. And that's going to help us grow revenue, and that's going to mean that our business can do this next year, and we can hire these people, and we can do this trip or whatever. So that part of it is really fulfilling. I think tying it back to, this specific company that I'm working for and working with. So that's given me the clarity of like, why do I love systems so much? Is because I love building the system that's going to help our company do this better in the future. CRM's always been a big part of that, and that's obviously where Membrain plays a big part. So just circling back to your question, yeah, prospecting processes, active pipeline, sales process, and then like micro processes in between. So yeah, I kind of nerd out about those things from time to time.
Yeah, and Zach, you're the same. I mean, diving in and same but different. Diving in on the processes, but diving in on how you communicate and how to get the best impact, and always honing that craft. What gets you really excited about like the sales and improving and figuring things out?
Yeah, and I guess just before going down that path, just to kind of expand on the idea of what sales means. It's that in and of itself is such a deep
I love
topic, I guess.
I love this. I love this because just so you are, we're all on one team, right? So
Yes.
this is like we're all on the same team. So it's really funny. Like the difference is like on a normal podcast, it would be like, hey, I ask a question, somebody gives an answer, and now it's like I ask a question, it's like, screw that question. Let's go back to.
Well, that should be the core of this episode is just defining what sales is for us.
Yes. All right. Sorry.
But as I'm listening to Nick describe, his philosophy and his outlook and how he feels about sales, I agree with so much of that. But I also think it's important to add that, like, when I personally say like helping people, that comes off as almost like a disingenuous kind of like altruistic sort of statement, I guess, without context. But as I think about the people that we sell to, right, they're a lot like us, right? Because we're in the niche where we're selling to sales teams. So you're absolutely right, Nick. When you say like nothing happens without sales, right? That's the fuel for the business, right? We have to grow that revenue. We have to expand accounts. We have to find those new opportunities. But I think that's kind of what makes it unique, like for our role, is by helping those customers realize those benefits in their own organizations, that in turn helps our company. So the better, and more effective we can be in that space, the better it is for everybody involved, right? And then that's where they start to tell their friends and their peers about us, and things kind of snowball from there. I apologize, Paul. I at this point have forgotten what the second question was there.
It didn't matter anyways. I forgot it too. Well, I actually think it's what you just brought up there is a really unique point about some of the stuff that we do, right? So I love the fact that we apply our own, and that's where we're going to go right now. We apply our own expertise and our own every single day life in how we're going to market and B2B selling and improving and using the systems and learnings and coaching and partners and all of those things that we do on a day-to-day basis to actually go and help somebody else with how they're doing that on a day-to-day basis. So I like it because it's one of those ultimate leverage points. I truly believe we're in the spot to elevate the sales profession, which is we have the best partners in the world. We are striving to be the best at what we do. And that includes the process and our continual learning and self-leadership and our continual pushing on that and figuring out how to help people better. And when I say help people, it's how did we solve those problems in our own business and theirs. So it's one of those things that gives us a leverage point that we're able to use our experience on a day-to-day basis to better serve other clients. And when you look at that on an ongoing thing, right? It changes companies, it changes communities. If we do our job right, it's not just our own company. It's growing, it's others. So in terms of that, kind of that leverage point and what you're doing, do you have any like cool stories around that in terms of the companies that you've worked with that you have seen based on what you're learning here and what you're like the true impact of change in their business? I mean, I know you have a ton of them, but any favorites? And Zach, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about using the tool that we're selling to organizations ourselves is that we can give that personal perspective, right? Like I can easily go into a conversation and talk about how Membrain has had a direct impact on my ability to serve my customers better. And I think when you can do that and show real world examples, of how you use, email inside the system, for example, versus chasing down your inbox and having 12 different tabs open, although I do that still to some degree, it really kind of connects the dots and helps people resonate with what we're trying to help them solve. But I think one of our recent customers put it best, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's all about the process and the methodology that you leverage with inside that tool that makes all the difference, right? So when you put those building blocks in place and you give people a framework to follow that is well thought out, it's structured, it's got some standardization built in there, that's the thing that really makes the difference. And that's what Membrain really excels in doing for our clients.
Well, and that's a very specific niche. Like that's a very specific, we really work well, and you really work well in the MSP space. Nick, you have one recently that you built that I thought was so cool. So you took some of the tenets of what we're doing in our methodology, and then you applied it to, it was essentially commercial real estate type opportunity where they have, and construction where they had multiple bids across multiple things. So, but being able to use sales best practice to solve that type of problem, do you mind diving a little bit into how you're doing that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'm going to pivot. No, I'm just kidding.
Check your watch. All right, pivot. All right.
Yeah, so that's the interesting opportunity at Membrain, and maybe that will change my answer to that question of what is sales at some point, because I do think that should develop over one's sales career, right? It certainly means something different to me today than it did 15 years ago. So at Membrain, I do have more of an opportunity to be involved in helping that customer design how they'll use the tool. So in this case that you're mentioning, yeah, they are a mason here in Columbus, Ohio, and it's very, very competitive in their world where there's somebody building something. Let's just say Membrain was building a headquarters here in Columbus, right? Membrain's going to find a developer to work with. There might be 2 or 3 developers bidding for that job. That developer is going to go find a general contractor or 2 to work with, and there might be 3 or 4 of those bidding with each developer. And then those general contractors are going to find contractors, and they're going to find subcontractors. So there's all these layers to it. And our customer was like, we might not know who's building the building. Like, we don't necessarily need to put Membrain into Membrain. It's a little meta, but we don't need to put that company in and create a sales project for them. We're not selling to them. We need to know about that. And then we need to really tie our bids or our sales projects to that construction project. So luckily, we worked with them for a couple of weeks, and we got really clear on that, and we were able to introduce one of our newest products into the mix for them to be using. And it's knocking it out of the park for them. And it is interesting to see how they were doing things in the past, just using an Outlook calendar. And now they're able to save one of their teammates like 17 hours of work a week that he was just managing a calendar. And now that can be time spent on bids and generating revenue for the company. So I think that's pretty exciting. It was a cool opportunity to be able to stay close with them, help them design, the process overall, layered in with the partner's methodology, and then deliver that to our onboarding team and say, hey, this is what we're moving forward with. Can you technically round it out with some custom fields and maybe some reminder systems and certain flags and things like this? But structurally, this is the way to go. And it was more than just one of our products, right? It was active pipeline, prospecting, as well as flows.
You got to fly, buzz the tower there. It came right at us.
That was a Hornet, but
Hornet. Oh,
yeah, they don't mess with me. They know.
They know
who's in charge around here.
Aren't viewing this, Nick's face is just swollen up to the size of a wall.
But Paul, you should add this question into your mix sometimes when you feel like what does sales mean to you becomes stale, or you're going at guests that have already answered that. What does sales process mean to you? Because that is a whole can of worms.
Oh, geez. It absolutely is a huge can of worms. The 2 words there that are a massive can of worms, which is sales process and methodology, right? If I say sales process to somebody that sells insurance, a lot of times they will say, oh, geez, it's what you do in a call. That's what a sales process is. I have if it's personal insurance, I'm going to show up. The process is I take off my shoes at the front door. I, lay down my briefcase. I come in, I sit at the table, I qualify need. Then I do, and these are the actions I'm going to take. And I have to check off certain things. Or when we say methodology, people are all over the place. So let me take a second and define kind of how I think of that in B2B sales, because it informs a lot of what we're doing, how we operate with people, and how you guys are operating. Because I think there's 2 things that are needed. One is we need a conversational methodology, right? It's how in general do we uncover information. call it discovery. We call ours vibe. Call it medpick or medic or gap or that type of thing. There is a way to understand how to dive deep into a problem, uncover what is necessary to do. And then a process is, what are the steps, I believe, what are the steps and stages that you need to walk together, or that you can prescribe, give or take steps as you need to actually move a deal forward. Right. So they interact in a really good way, but they're two separate things. Like, we have to understand. So when I talk about vibe, very easy. It's vision. And what we call vision is that gap between is their current state, what they got, and the future state. There's a gap there. That gap is the eyes. What are the issues they're having? And then the impacts that they want to achieve. Right. And then what's stopping them? What are the barriers to get there, and how do they execute? So I don't need to use those words, but I can have a conversation and understand those frameworks. And whenever we say that, we can talk about the same thing. Our process is is intertwined, but different, right? So our process, we know at the very beginning, at that first stage, if we don't have commitment from at least, the decision makers on the team to be able to have that conversation with us, then we're likely not going to close a deal. It just is the case. We're not a show up, throw up, and leave type of platform. It doesn't work that way. We're not a one demo and okay, I'm gonna throw down 76 licenses and pay you $6,000 a month. We're generally okay. Let's get your leadership involved. Let's talk about this. Let's understand your vibe. Let's understand what you're really trying to do. So in our process, we have that. Right, that's a step as a part of a stage in our process. So methodology and process, those words are used all over the place in terms of sales. And I think it's a great question you just asked there, because it is a can of worms, Nick. And people don't understand exactly what you say. You have to dive a little bit deeper. When you asked that question, tell me a little bit more. Why did you ask that?
Yeah, and let me check my audio. Is it still okay? Got some guy fired up a generator over here.
Yeah, the swelling on your face is massive from the Hornet,
Okay.
But the audio is fine.
Yeah, good. Well, candidly, I have recently reread Cracking the Sales Management Code, and it really has had a big impact on how I think about sales process. I think the word itself is broken because, and Membrain is actually really well suited to solving this. Sales processes. Like, sales process is too restrictive, and that's why people think, oh, sales process, that's like our pipeline stages and steps, right? And that could be true. You do have a process for how you're moving opportunities forward and managing, qualified opportunities, but you also have a sales process for how you prospect. And that's going to be different when you're prospecting for, going outbound to net new accounts, or if you're doing an attempt on deals that you've lost in the past. Like, you have a process for how you do that sales activity. And that was a big differentiator, right? Like, this book spells out at the top is your business results. And there's a few categories: financial, market share, and then customer satisfaction. And then below that, you've got your sales objectives. And these are things like the coverage and capability of your sales team and the products and customers that you're focused on selling. And then you've got below that are sales activities, which are the things you can actually manage and have sales processes for. Like, it all ties together. That's the whole thing. But like, to me, it's at that very low level, at the most granular level, where you actually have processes for how you do things in a day that are tied to specific objectives that you're trying to hit, that are tied to the specific result that the company's trying to achieve. And those processes will be different if your goal is to improve customer satisfaction versus if your goal is we want to grow net new revenue by 75%. Over last year. Like, your process will be different based on what those results and objectives are. So I just think that term, tell me about your sales process, is lame and it's ambiguous. And I think it's helpful if you ask it to kind of clarify like how that person views the world. If they say, oh, our sales process is, whatever story you told about taking off your shoes and briefcase, whatever. Okay. Then it's like, how's that your sales process, I guess? So I don't know. It's an interesting question to me. And it's helped me really think through like, okay, these are the things that I actually need to be doing that I can manage and ask Paul to hold me accountable to. What's my process for doing those things? And that's where I get a lot of energy and start to nerd out about. That's what I like about sales. Like, how do I make that a better process? Like, how do I make me better at doing that? Whether it's, I need a process for training. Who do I go to for that? When do I go to them? Is it on Zoom? Is it in person? Like, that's part of the process. Like, do I get in my car, drive to this training center, meet with the coach, get in the room? Like, that's all the process to me. It's like, what are you actually doing? So, and I would like Riverside FM to count how many times I use process in this monologue. The word, probably.
The word Riverside.
What do you think? It was over under 100.
I think you got, I don't know. AI. Oh, dang. I don't have Fathom in here.
Zach,
anyway,
tell me, does that make sense to you? You made some good faces there. What are you thinking?
Yeah, 100%. And I recently finished reading Cracking the Sales Management Code as well. And I think my big takeaway is it's about controlling the controllables, right? Because we can set a massive revenue target and say, hey, we've got to sell 100 grand this quarter or whatever. But without having those controllables outlined as part of the process, that number is just pie in the sky, right? We can't really directly influence that number until we do the little things really well consistently. And that's really the idea of having that process, because it becomes a multiplier. We can go in and we can figure out where are things falling off the rails? What can we do better in terms of dialing in our ideal client profile? What factors are actually influencing our ability to win and capture that business in the first place? Are there things that we should be aware of going into a conversation that, should put up red flags and say, hey, we need to dive deeper on this and explore it? Because without those road signs, right, along the way, we're just driving blind, essentially. Yeah, I think having some ability to control, and be consistent across that process is the big key.
And it's so refreshing, Paul. We just went through this quarterly planning exercise, and you do all this work, spend a day really, straining your brain to think through these complex ideas, and then you land on, oh, I need to pick up the phone 25 times a day, and I need to do that for these people here, and I need to do that consistently, and I need to set a goal to try to reach out to these people this many times. It's like, and to do that, I need a process to manage my time. So I'm going to use time blocks on my calendar, and I'm going to have an hour for this and an hour for that. And it's just like these core principles that sometimes get lost in the sauce, dude. And it's just like really refreshing when you just get back down to controlling what you can control. You'll have so much better days knowing like, okay, maybe it didn't feel like I totally won the day, but if I look at what I did, I can log off and be like, all right, I moved forward towards our goal. And then you got to adjust it if you need to, right? If you're not hitting those objectives based on the process you're doing, then you got to adjust that. So yeah, it's quite refreshing to get back down to basics.
I love it. I think we're talking books, Atomic Habits, and what is it? I think it's the Checklist Manifesto. Atomic Habits. I love how he describes one big quote from there is you don't fall to rise to the level of your talents, you fall to the level of your systems, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing.
Yep.
But I think when you start to get people to think in terms of, and that's why I love this distinction between, and you're right, it is processes, right? It's what are the things we need to achieve, and how best do we define achieving those, and what leverage do we want to give each other in achieving those. So a doctor, this go back kind of the Checklist Manifesto, a doctor or a pilot has zero area for creativity on a certain number of things, right? There's like a limit of 0 on what they can and can't do in terms of, like, go to a doctor, sterilization and preparation. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. So I'm guessing here, but I don't want to go to a doctor that doesn't have a checklist on how to clean shit, before they put it into me, right? That's just not a good thing. So there's zero flexibility in that, right? But like sales, like you can get down to a level with your team and that's what we do here, which is cool, where it's like, so what is our level of flexibility on this process that gives us the maximum efficacy and result, but the minimum overhead? And so how can we determine what are the roadmaps that we're going to agree to work on together that are the most impactful for us, but then, they also give you room for creativity in the areas you can be creative and awesome. And I think that's the process. And where do those fit? Prospecting, pipeline management, working a deal, growing your accounts, even coaching. Like we process for coaching, quarterly reviews. And I see that as different than the idea of coaching, the sales methodology, right? Which I take, or method. Somebody yelled at me once for calling it a methodology because he's like, that's the study of methods. It's an ology. So sales method, right? So the method.
Another broken word.
Yeah, another broken word. Mike, that was you who, if you're listening to this. But it's really, what is that? Like, how do we just arm ourselves for having the conversations that we need to have on an ongoing basis, that we can find our ways together? So it's that book, by the way, Cracking the Sales Management Code, is absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend you read it. So, hey, we gotta roll.
No,
we're going to close up. We do. I got a meeting in 10 minutes thing, but I really do.
I got another good debate topic. Let's just do it real quick.
Zach, do you want to take him up on this debate?
Yeah, I want to hear it. I'm intrigued.
He might agree. It might not even be a debate, but it'll just kind of wrap up that point. So like meetings held, do you consider that a activity or an objective or effectiveness metric?
We had this debate already, I think. I know my answer.
What's your answer?
You can't control. You can control a lot of variables, but ultimately you can't control whether or not that particular meeting, if we schedule this one for 1:00 on a Tuesday, I can't control whether or not that is held. I can control a lot of variables for that.
Yeah. It's just, I see a lot of times like, we have a goal for a sales rep needs to hold 10 new discovery meetings a month. And then it's like, cool. So what do they need to do that? And that's where like the ball is dropped. It's like, well, we told them to do it. And I just think that that's where you can then have a process. And that's where Membrain is so good, is because you can build all of these different processes into the system. That was one thing that kind of shocked me when I first started with Membrain. I was like, why would you have multiple pipeline processes or multiple account growth processes or multiple prospecting processes? And like, I can see my prospects and customers are kind of like, whoa, you have a lot. Like when I show them in my demo, and I'm like, yeah, you probably won't have this many, but like you could have different, and you could grow, you know what I mean? And there's definitely a use case for that. And it's just, I think Membrain is so good at allowing you to, and I do like that change in methodology to method. Like that resonates in my brain. Like, what's our method for selling? That makes sense. And then you can put a plan in place, an actionable process or plan, habits. It's also good.
Zach, what do you think about that?
There's so many factors that play into that too. And we've got to talk about, what are we striving toward with the meetings, right? Because in a lot of cases, managers will point at, the number of meetings booked, for example, as a key metric, right? And that's all well and good because it gives you a starting point of, how often you're converting and things like that. But as you start to zoom out and get the full scope, and this takes time to develop. An early stage organization isn't going to have a big data set to look at. But if you think about how we qualify things to the pipeline, that actually becomes more important than the number of meetings itself, right? Because if I've got 10 meetings booked and I'm not going through the right steps to qualify or disqualify that from entering in the pipeline in the first place, then what are we even doing? and segmenting those and figuring out who your qualified opportunities actually are before they start impacting your forecast is really where the gold is at. Because I'd rather have 3 meetings on the book that are highly qualified and have the potential to actually purchase the solution versus having 10 that are just, we're throwing noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks, because that's going to impact the close rate negatively. We're going to focus on the wrong things. We're going to get happy years too often because we're just trying to hit a big target for the sake of hitting it. But I think that's one of those things that Membrain allows you to really do. Zoom out, segment your actual pipeline opportunities from your prospecting opportunities, and then have those check marks along the way, those checkpoints rather, that allow you to figure out whether or not you've got a viable opportunity in front of you in the first place.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it boils down to the three R's. So, right people, right company, right time. So let's say meetings is your only benchmark, right? Meetings held. You can have a rep that has 40 meetings in a week and they do nothing, right? So what's critical, and really where I think I love looking at things like pipeline stage transition and meetings per stage transition and those type of things that I nerd out about, is, are we being effective, the right time, right place with the right people? And so, do the things that we do move our process forward? If not, why? If so, awesome. Who's doing it really well? And those are the critical, like I could care less if it's a meeting, a conversation, an email exchange, or a LinkedIn post. It's what are we doing to move something forward? Business is a function of the number of quality conversations to move the needle forward that you've had with people that fit your ICP. So right people at the right time, the right place or company. And so when you start to get that down, that's where you get this. We have to have qualified opportunities in a pipeline. We have to be meeting with the right people. We have to be having the right type of conversations. And when you get that all there, it's magic. And you guys do a ton of that in your day-to-day. Like, you just know, you use Vibeball enough and the questions to qualify and how you work things forward and move things forward and work with your partners. And the growth in that has been just tremendous. Your own personal growth has been followed by the growth in your results. Like, it's been awesome to see. So Zach, Nick, thank you so much. Or should I call you Knack and Zick? Thank you so much for coming on, just tearing it up a little bit around sales. Love working with you guys, and you do an amazing job. Any final thoughts for the audience?
How you sell matters.
How you sell absolutely matters. Nick, you had a head shake. Nothing else?
Nope.
Nothing else?
I've emptied the tank.
Nick has emptied the tank, and go get some ice on that hornet wound. And we will talk to you both soon. And hey, keep shining bright, guys. We'll talk soon.
Woo!